ever told you that you look like your mom? Or maybe they said that you had your grandfather's eyes or your father's hair. Your traits are randomly determined by the genes that you inherit from your parents. You may wonder why you don't resemble your brother or your sister. That's because inherited traits don't always make us look alike.
Traits, like our eyes, ears, and hair, are things that make each and every one of us unique. The study of genes and how they pass from parent to offspring is genetics. Before we start investigating how your genes determine your traits, there are several things that you need to know.
That was a lot of spinning.
Okay, so you know that organisms inherit their genes from their parents, and you know that we don't always look and act the same as our parents. And that's because not all genes are the same.
You inherited at least one gene that controls tongue rolling from your parents. Together, these genes determine if you can roll your tongue or not.
It turns out some genes are dominant and others are recessive. A dominant gene is one that overpowers a recessive gene. But what does that really mean? Let's go back to our tongue rolling example. In humans, tongue rolling is a dominant gene, and not being able to tongue roll is a recessive gene. In genetics, we use capital letters to represent dominance and lowercase letters to represent submissive genes.
For example, all humans have genes that determine if they are able to roll their tongue or not. There are two forms of the tongue rolling gene. The dominant gene allows a person to roll their tongue, while a recessive gene does not allow a person to roll their tongue.
So if you are a tongue roller, then you could have inherited a dominant gene from each parent, or one dominant gene and one recessive gene from your parents. Because the dominant gene is more powerful than the recessive one, that's the one that shows up in you.
If you can't roll your tongue like me, then that probably means that you've inherited a recessive gene from each of your parents. Oh, hey, Nicole!
Let's take a minute to look at a couple of other genetic traits that you might have inherited from your parents. It may be helpful at this point in the video to pause and discuss more in depth about some of these traits.
Rolling. Another commonly inherited trait is dimples. Do any of you guys have dimples? What about your parents? Let's take a look at an example. You see, both Nicole's mom and dad don't have dimples. Do you think Nicole will have dimples? If you said no, then you're right. As you can see, Nicole does not have dimples.
Here's another example for you. When you clasp your hands together, does your left thumb or your right thumb go on top? Nicole's parents both have their left thumbs on top. What do you think that means for Nicole? As you probably guessed, she also puts her left thumb on top.
The last example we'll be talking about is mid-digit hair. Take a look at your fingers. Some of you guys, like Nicole's mom, won't have mid-digit hair on your fingers. Others, like Nicole's dad, will have mid-digit hair on your fingers. The question is, does Nicole? Having hair is a dominant gene, so she does have mid-digit hair.
And just like people, plants also have traits that can be passed on to their offspring as well. Let's take a look at a little demonstration.
In this picture, we have an orange flower and a blue flower. Each have yellow centers, but both have different colored stems. If there are genes controlling the color of the petals and the stems, what do you think the flower's offspring will look like? Here is a picture of the offspring. The offspring will have different traits from different parents. The offspring may have yellow center, orange petals with a dark green stem, or light green stem with the blue petals. Each flower is unique because there are many different possibilities that a mom and dad flower can produce. We hope you learned a little bit about genetics and inheritance.